I'd like to call the January 8th full county board meeting to order. Today's invocation is from Shane Ritter.
Bow our heads as we pray. Lord, as we start this new year, we just want to take a moment to pause and acknowledge you, Father. Lord, as we look back at 2018, we see all the change, all the good, and all the provision, Lord, and we thank you for that. We know you are the giver of all good things, Lord, and we thank you for that. And Lord, it's also because of that, as we look forward to 2019, we look with hope and encouragement, as we know you're preparing the way for us, Lord, and we just ask for your blessing and for your grace and provision again as we move forward into this new year. Lord, I do want to lift up the county workers, Lord, ask your blessing on them and helping them as they do their day-to-day tasks, Lord, as they are the face of the county that many people see in the eyes and ears of the county, Lord, and we just ask your blessing on them. Lord, even more so, we want to ask your blessing on the first responders, Lord, the deputy sheriffs, the medics, and all the people that do that, Lord, that you just protect them, Lord. We ask your protection over them and your guidance for them as they face many situations that thankfully we never have to face. And Lord, we thank you for their service. And Lord, I do want to just lift up this county board, Lord, as we are the overseers of this, and we have been tasked with that, Lord, that you would just give us wisdom and grace, Lord, that we'd be able to discern your way and discern your path in this, Lord, and just bless our actions, Lord. Father, I pray that everything we say and do in here would bring glory and honor to you, Lord. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Could we get a roll call vote, please? Roll call. Sorry, not a vote.
Mr. Tripp. Mr. Washington. Present. Mr. LaJust. Present. Mr. Olthoff. Mr. Hess. Present. Mr. Tholen. Present. Mrs. Polk. Present. Mr. Snipes. Present. Mr. Byrne. Present. Mr. Seroy. Present. Mr. Lear. Present. Mrs. Weber. Present. Mrs. Peters. Present. Mr. Payton. Present. Mrs. Parker. Present. Ms. Dunbar. Present. Mr. Ritter. Present. Mr. Kinzinger. Present. Mr. Fairfield. Present. Mr. Zenz. Present. Ms. Haas. Present. Mr. Carrico. Present. Mr. Eckhoff. Present. Mr. Smith. Present. Mr. Swanson. Present. Ms. Zakulo. Present. Mr. Featherling. Present. Mr. Wheeler.
Present. We have a quorum. Before I get started, can everybody hear me in the hallway? Can you hear better out there now? Okay, so we have a lot of people. If it does get to the point you want to say something, please speak into the mic a little bit closer than normal. Alrighty, under public commentary, it's 9:04. We have 15 minutes for public commentary by code. The first person is Doug Duncan from Moments. Please step up to the microphone in the rear there.
Morning, board. I come here this morning as just a citizen of Kankakee County, a small business owner of Kankakee County, and a retired veteran. We come here asking about you guys to really take consideration on that resolution to turn Kankakee County into a gun sanctuary county. These people here are friends and colleagues of mine. They showed up because we don't want our Second Amendments infringed upon. So we'd really like you to take a look at that and really consider that for us.
Okay. Thank you. Next is Chad Scanlon from Bonfield. Next up was Chad Scanlon from Bonfield. All right, just making sure. Checking the mic.
Hi, I'm Chad Scanlon. I live at 1538 South, 9000 West Road in Bonfield. The reason that I'm here today is for the solar farm project that is going to be for proposal, and it's located right across from my house. My point of view is anyone here that would be in my shoes would be right where I'm standing today speaking on this. The property that's in question is it's a unique project because it surrounds an entire house. It also is across from my house. There's residents in that area that are opposed to this project. I just wanted to stand here and tell you guys that I'm against it, and I think you guys should be against it too. I think the Zoning Board of Appeals got it right, and I hope that you guys see it their way too. Thank you.
Thank you. Next was Tiffany Scanlon from Bonfield.
Hi. I actually have a copy of the 2 previously denied solar farm applications I would like to pass out to each of the county board members, just because I'm going to reference them when I speak about our solar farm application. That I would like them to see
That's evidence already
where
in
these properties
circulation,
are.
so it's proper. Yeah, that's already been submitted evidence, so yeah, well, you can pass that out if you would like. Yeah. Hmm? Right, but it is evidence that's already.
So when you get your information there, it's just one sheet front and back. You'll see that there's only been 3 that have been denied by the ZBA. There's 2 right there and then ours. The first one, 1826, was denied all the way through, residents living across the street. 1830 on the back side is the second application, all the way through denied. People spoke up, people were against it, it was denied. Then ours comes along, 1850. The ZBA board voted against it, and then the PZA decided it was just like every other application. This is not like every other application. This is like those 2 applications in front of you. There's a residence with the solar farm on 2 sides of the property, and there's ours across the street. That is similar to what you have in your hand. The last thing I want to point out is the Lisa score. Ours was 223.8, which is less than 2 points from being high. Thank you.
Next up is excuse me, I skipped one. Tony Brazel from Bourbonnais. Okay.
Good morning, and thank you for the allowing me to speak to you, even though you tried to pass over me. You knew I was a lawyer. I'm a lawyer in Bourbonnais. I'm here for Larry Serene, and who's a property owner adjacent to the landfill or the solar farm that was just talked about by Chad and Tiffany. They gave the practical part, which was presented to the Zoning Board of Appeals, and I'm here to maybe argue just a little bit. I'm not going to take a lot of your time as far as the legality. It was a unanimous vote against the solar farm at the Board of Appeals, and they heard the evidence. There was a lot of evidence submitted. I think that was, as Chad and Tiffany just said, that was the correct, in our opinion, a correct decision. And it appears that when it got to zoning and planning, and I'm not quite sure exactly, reading the reports of the committee, why they felt at that committee meeting, why they wanted to overrule or not pay attention to the recommendation of the Zoning Board of Appeals. And it didn't appear to me that they made a required finding of fact that was in opposition to what the Zoning Board of Appeals had made. And I think that based upon looking at prior cases in Kankakee County that you guys have handled, looking at prior statements in zoning and planning committee meetings, it appears that the correct procedure in my mind, and I think under the law, would be if you don't, of course, we want you to vote it down. So we think that's the correct thing, unanimous at the Zoning Board of Appeals, vote it down, that's the correct thing to do. If you don't want to do that, then send it back, and I think the correct procedure is, and I can submit a report that was dated back in May of last year where Mr. Skimmerhorn outlined what the procedure is. Now, I'm not saying you have to do that, I think that's the correct procedure under your precedent and the way I interpret the case law. I think you need to send it back to the Zoning Board of Appeals, have the Zoning Board of Appeals say whatever, or consider the finding, if there is a finding that I don't see from the Zoning Committee, Zoning and Planning, send it back to them and see if they agree or disagree, and then bring it back that way. That would be the correct method, in our opinion, in dealing with this situation. So number one, we'd like you to, and appreciate your time, we'd like you to deny the solar farm in 1850, or send it back to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Thank you.
Dan Chappelle from Grant Park.
My name is Claudia Booth, and Dan asked if I could speak on his behalf, if that's all right.
Is it B-O-O-T-H?
Yes.
E?
Yes, sir. My name is Claudia Booth. I'm a military veteran, and I'm speaking on behalf of Dan Chappell. And I come to you today, and I believe I represent the group in front of you and in the hallway. We are Second Amendment supporters in the form of military veterans and hunters and shooting sportsmen and home defenders. And we would like to thank Mr. Eckhoff for bringing the Kankakee County Gun Sanctuary move before you. And we would like to ask for your full support to bring Kankakee County Gun Sanctuary, our home as a sanctuary, as well as half of Illinois already has. Thank you.
Next is Kim Bacon, I believe from Kankakee.
Good morning. My name is Kim Bacon. I live on South Fifth Avenue in Kankakee, Illinois. I wanted to talk about Jesus Cabrera, who is a restaurant, from dishwasher to restaurateur, who was living his dream here in Northwest Indiana, Portage. 16 years ago, he immigrated to Northwest Indiana, just wanting to make his life better. Then at the age of 16, he came from Guadalajara, Mexico with his brother and settled in Cherville. I just came to work just to improve my life, he said. He began working in restaurants, bussing tables, washing dishes, cooking and serving patrons. I just came to work and didn't even think what I was going to be, said Cabrera. Now a Portage resident, after working in a restaurant for a year, this became my dream. I figured I would like to have a nice restaurant one day. Cabrera, age 32, now owns 2 restaurants. When I came here, I learned I just did my work. Everything takes a lot of work, and you might as well do what you know, he said. While he's not washing dishes anymore and rarely cooks, he manages staff, great customers at the family restaurant, which also has a small bar. I'd like to be with customers, he said. I like people. He said he prides himself on his and his staff's customer service, quality of food, and affordable prices. Everything we make is from scratch. Nothing is ever frozen. We make it daily, said Cabrera, adding his favorites are barbacoa and carne asada. In addition to serving breakfast, lunch, and dinner 7 days a week, Cabrera offers a mariachi band every other Sunday evening and other periodic live entertainment. He said he's hoping to be able to host larger events in the future. But on December 14th, 11 days before Christmas, ICE raided both of his restaurants. They took him and 4 other of his employees into custody to the Jerome Combs Detention Center. I'm going to shorten what I say, other than I just would like the community to know that these people are being held in our county jail. This community in Indiana was shocked. The people being detained at Jerome Combs Detention Center were a tremendous asset to their hometowns. They had lived and worked and raised their families for more than 15 years. They paid income taxes, sales taxes, payroll taxes. They were members of their churches, their area chamber of commerce, involved in their school districts. They are people just like you and me. This is an ongoing event, and it connects our county with a large Midwestern efforts of deportation through the Gary Airport. This event has been covered on local, state, and national news, and the Jerome Combs Detention Center is now known as an ICE detention center nationally. The people of this area have now constructed a billboard on I-94 and I-80, which says, "Stop the deportation at the Gary Airport. Families belong together." We at Connect are not going to stop. We are building alliances for our county. It is immoral and inhumane to micro-target a segment of our community, arrest them, detain them while we reduce our county debt at their expense of their families' tragedies. At some point, this will be illegal, hopefully sooner rather than later, terrorizing the Hispanic community. Kankakee County has 14 Mexican restaurants that employ hundreds of people. Can you see how this defines who we are? Not only locally, but even nationally? Perhaps a billboard will be constructed on Interstate 57 at the Jerome Combs Detention Center. Please step up for our community and its integrity. We can do this. We can operate without participating in ripping families apart, not even considering the economic impact it has on our county. This is not who we are. We are so much better than this. Thank you.
Next is Christina Mitzdorfer from Bonfield.
Good morning. First, I live in the property that's going to be sited on two sides by the solar panel that's proposed out by 9000 West Road. I want to rebut some comments that were made on December 19th, 2018 when the PCA overturned the Zoning Board of Appeals denial. First, Mr. Althoff made the comment that if an individual wants to maintain a view, then they would need to buy acreage. Buy 40 acres. Sir, this is an old homestead site preserved by my family. It was built in 1882 and it originally had 80 acres surrounding it. We were not given the opportunity to purchase the 40 acres. It was subdivided and sold from the original landowner, Pat O'Connor, to his out-of-town relative who lives up in Oswego, Illinois. Secondly, there was numerous comments about how this application is no different than any other application before them. The fact is, this is a very different site. I have reviewed all of the 48 applications. I have plotted them on the plat map, and our residence is the only one that two sides of our property will be solar panels. Two sides. The other side is only 25 feet. There are several sites that have solar panel farms on them, 1 to 2 sides. I agree with that. But these homes are rental properties by the landowners. A majority of the solar applications approved are set back away from homeowners. That's what I would request. But the landowner only owns the small amount of acreage around my home. I'd like to further add that I was affected in the late 80s by the Shell oil spill. Kankakee County did me wrong then. I lost my daughter to cancer. She's buried 1 mile from my house in a cemetery that I visit. When it's nice out, I walk to that property every day. How can you say that this case is similar to all the others? It's not. The other landowners own those homes and rent them out. I bought this property 18 years ago. I raised my family there. And now I do not want solar panels surrounding my property and my view, which yes, it's aesthetically can be fine for some. It's not to me. My husband hunts. He trap shoots. So a couple pellets might accidentally go out into the field and ruin their solar panels. I mean, come on. Let's use some common sense here. All the other landowners have even pushed certain areas to different spots to appease their neighbors. These people that own this do not live here. They do not have to see me every day. They do not have to see these solar panels every day. That is an issue. That's why they don't care. It's all about greed. And unfortunately, in the 80s, when I heard last one out of Kankakee County turn the lights off, I think that's the same thing that's going on right now. In fact, I think Illinois is pushing more and more people out of here. Stop thinking of the bigger picture or looking at the small picture of wanting increased tax revenue, increased fees for special permits. I understand that. I work in the healthcare field. I take care of people in this county every day. It's my passion. I see most of your families in the hospital. Please, I beg of all 28 of you to vote this no.
We are at the end of public comment time. As we still have a couple left, I guess. We have 3 left. Mr. Snipes and second, Mr. Ritter. All those in favor? Those opposed? Okay, we have Joe Boyle from Glenview, Illinois.
Thanks very much for this opportunity. Like the speaker before me expressed concern about people leaving Illinois. I come not from your county, but from Cook County, Glenview, Illinois, but I come as an Illinoisan. I'm proud to be still from Illinois and still in Illinois, and I seek good government because I think a lot of people are leaving in response to the government. I come to applaud the efforts your county board is making to make your decisions available to the public, because decisions that happen in Cook County can obviously affect Kankakee County. The same happens back and forth. I worship the same God that we prayed to at the start of our session with a community that's largely people who have come from Central America to forge their lives and their livelihoods in the neighborhood that I worship in. And I understand that your county has elected to use the jail facility that you have to detain persons who have immigration status problems. Some people call them illegal. The point is they don't have the freedom to be with their families when they're in detention. In looking for the efforts that you have to make your decisions transparent, I marveled at your website, and particularly the sheriff's one, Sheriff Downey, your ability to focus and search for the name of an inmate. Well, I did that. I didn't see any of the people that I thought would be here. So I would recommend that the board consider expanding its transparency in these decisions and start with expanding the website so it contains all the human beings who are being detained at your facility. Thanks for this opportunity.
Next is Margaret Stapleton from, I think it says Evanston.
Good morning. Thank you for your time. I have about a minute, I think, to speak to you. I'm Margaret Stapleton. I'm from Evanston, Illinois. I echo the comments of the 2 preceding speakers. I'd like to very briefly talk to you about ICE detention and the possible expansion of ICE detention at your county jail. And I'm going to do that simply by reading to you 2 paragraphs from the public statement of the Archdiocese of Chicago. I belong to St. Nicholas Parish, a 125-year-old parish in Evanston, which was founded by immigrants and is now largely worshipped in by recent immigrants and people like me, whose parents were immigrants. 2 paragraphs I would like to read to you, calling the attention of Catholics in the Archdiocese of Chicago to the Church's position on migration. This is the statement on National Migration Week. And I read and I quote, "Today, there are caravans of people, mothers, fathers, children, seeking a destination of hope, promise, and prosperity in countries willing to welcome them. Those who make their way from Central America to the United States are often fleeing violence and the all too real danger of death. They are fleeing the threats of gangs who are able to prosper because the demand for drugs in the United States is so high. Some are fleeing because there are no legal jobs, nothing to sustain their families. What parent would not do everything in their power to assure that their spouse and children are safe and provided for? And they come not for a handout, but for a hand to help them up so that they can offer their gifts of labor, creativity, faith, and culture to the communities in which they live. 2 more sentences. This week, the U.S. Church celebrates National Migration Week, recognizing the millions of people fleeing war, oppression, gang violence, genocide, and famine to find a better life for their families. We, that's speaking to the Catholics, need to resist any efforts to separate, incarcerate, or turn away families who are simply seeking our welcome, ready to offer their gifts to support their families, our churches, our families, and our communities. Thank you for your time. Please take this kind of perspective into account as you deal with any issues around the county jail. Thank you.
Finally, we have Bobby Wheeler from Bradley. Microphone is right back there.
Most of you are familiar with me. I'm Bobby Wheeler, and I live in Bradley. And I got an alert that they're talking about our gun rights and making this a sanctuary county so that they can't take away any more of our gun privileges, which I am totally in support of. I don't think that Chicago and their draconian laws should have a thing to do with Kankakee County. I think when you reach my age, which is a senior citizen, considered elderly, I think we need the ability to be able to carry a gun and be unrestricted how many magazines and how many bullets we can carry. We don't know how many it's going to take at this age. So I just think that we need to keep that in mind, make this a sanctuary county. God bless everybody that's trying to keep it that way. Thank you.
All right, just as a note of the agenda that's ahead of us, there is no agenda item for any action on this today. So what was sent out by the State Rifle Association was highly inaccurate. I have a feeling there might be one of our board members who makes the suggestion in new business to have this go to our executive committee, but I didn't want to waste people's time. If you want to stay and enjoy the fun, please do. But this will be the last that we will discuss this until potentially new business. And then there will be no vote today because it has to be on the agenda in order for us to vote on something. I just want to make sure everybody knew that. So that being said, moving forward, have nothing under communications. Under presentations, I have a proclamation honoring Dr. Patricia Polk for her many years of community engagement. If I could get that please read into the record.
Absolutely. Proclamation of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois. Proclamation honoring Dr. Patricia Polk for her many years of community engagement. Whereas Dr. Patricia Polk, a retired teacher and school administrator for School District 111, was elected to and has served on the county board since 2008. And whereas Dr. Polk has championed the education and public engagement of young women throughout her involvement in many local youth organizations. And whereas Dr. Polk is an active member at the House Prayer Apostolic Church and attributes her desire to help others to her deep personal faith. And whereas she has also founded Polk Entertainment Enterprise, an organization that strives to foster self-esteem and determination of children and teens. And whereas her commitment to her community is unrivaled and she continues to demonstrate her enthusiasm yearly by coordinating the annual Community Leaders Prayer Breakfast. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the Kankakee County Board greatly appreciates Dr. Patricia Polk's service to her community in a variety of different ways and wishes to thank her for her continued involvement in the annual Community Leaders Prayer Breakfast.
So at this point, I'd entertain a motion to approve this resolution. Mr. Washington, second from Mr. Ritter. You know, this actually motion should, by all rights, go to Mr. Payton, who suggested this to me, and I thought it was a very appropriate suggestion. Many years on this board, Dr. Polk has served, and I consider it an honor to serve with her. It's sometimes tough to get a word edgewise with her in the room, but I will tell you that she does let me know when things have to go a certain way. So I will say, is there any other comments from this board in this regard towards the service of Dr. Polk? Mr. Snipes.
I wanted to echo the same sentiments of whatever I worked with Dr. Polk down through the years in education, in community service, in civil service. And certainly she has been involved all the way from getting the teen pageants here and also getting the first Miss America from Kankakee County at the national level. So I think this is definitely fitting for Dr. Polk, who has, she's just a pillar in our community. So I echo those sentiments.
Thank you. Any other comments, please, from the board, if there are any? Mr. Payton.
I just want to say it was truly my pleasure to suggest for Dr. Polk that she receive this award. The 12 years I've been in Kankakee County, I watched her, and she always give of herself, and I appreciated that.
All righty. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Congratulations, Dr. Polk. Thank you. Yes. So in lieu of a fancy bronze plaque, we will have this at least put together into something signed by me and the other part of the tag team up here. So we'll get that to you in the future in a nice presentable folder, something you put on the wall. Moving on, under second presentations, we have here is Tim Nugent, the president and CEO. I always want to make sure I get that correct. Yeah, of the Economic Alliance of Kankakee County. Usually once a year, Tim comes in and kind of gives us a wrap up of what's going on and entertains any questions. So moving on, the mic is yours, sir.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. When I got off the elevator and saw the crowd, I was pretty excited that there was that many people that wanted to come to the county board meeting and hear all the good news. And then I learned that there was a few other things on the agenda. So, but there is a lot of good things that are happening in the area and happening in Kankakee County. And like the chairman said, once a year I come and try to update the county board as to what's taking place. This year I know there's a lot of new county board members, so kind of want to go through a little bit and explain what the Economic Alliance is. You might have heard about it, but the Economic Alliance is a public-private partnership. It's a partnership between Kankakee County and the Kankakee County Economic Development Association. It's funded about 85% privately and 15% through county funds. And our goal is to be the economic development arm of Kankakee County and go out and try to create new jobs, bring new businesses into the community, and retain the businesses that we currently have. And we have a comprehensive economic development strategy. We call it the SEDS, and that's kind of our gospel and our Bible, and that's what we go by, and that's the thing that we use when we try to decide exactly which direction we want to go in Kankakee County. We are governed by a 16-member board. There's only 15 names on there. There's one spot that is open. You'll see that we have people from the utilities, from banks, from government, 4 county board members. We have people from private industry, from the healthcare industry, a variety of different people that serve on our board, from a minority community, from the unions, from construction. We meet 5 times a year, and I give updates as to what's taking place throughout the county, in the economic development realm. This is a report that's put out every month by the Illinois Department of Employment Security. It talks about the unemployment rate in Kankakee County. This is the one for November. It shows that our unemployment rate in Kankakee County is 4.8%, which is a little bit higher than the national level or the state level. But the thing off to the right there that's highlighted in red that I think is one of the more important things is that you read that Kankakee County has created more jobs than any percentage-wise than any other MSA, Metropolitan Statistical Area, in the state of Illinois for the month of November. As a matter of fact, Kankakee County has ranked #1 in 8 of the first 11 months in 2019 for job creation. And you probably can't see it at the bottom there, but it'll show you that there's about a little over 50,000 people working in Kankakee County. But the key thing is that there's 2,200 more people working this year in November of 2019 than there was in November of 2018. Like I say, if you can't read these, we'll send all this material out to every county or every board member, in this here, so you can have a copy of it, so you can read it. But that's what I think is the statistics that's most important. 2,200 more people that are living in the county, that are working in the county, that are buying gas, getting mortgages, getting loans, feeding their family than there was last year. So, the job creation that's taken place by our companies and our manufacturers in the last couple of years has been dramatic. And this is another report that comes out from a company called Headlight Data, and it ranks Kankakee County as 99 out of 100, 100 being the best in our position as far as job creation. And it ranks us #3 out of 200 and some counties for our economic growth. But one of the reasons that I included in this slide is on the side and the bottom, it shows all the different industries, and it shows where people are working, whether it be healthcare, manufacturing, whatever industry it might be, and the job growth in those industries. And you'll see that in Kankakee County, we've got a rapid growth of in manufacturing, which manufacturing jobs are great for the county because the spinoff of manufacturing jobs creates all kinds of other service jobs throughout the area. This is another graphic that came across my computer a week or two ago. It shows the United States and the top job producing area in each of the 50 states. And if you can't see it there, Kankakee, Illinois is the one for the state of Illinois. Over the last 5 years, there have been more jobs percentage-wise produced in Kankakee County than any area in the state of Illinois. So we're starting to get a little bit of recognition for the job creation and the things that are taking place here. And that's one of the things that you'll see here. This magazine came out last summer. It's called Area Development Magazine. It's kind of a specific magazine strictly for economic development people, and they rank different communities based on the activity. And as I was thumbing through it, we hadn't appeared in this magazine ever before. And I get to the back pages where they do the rankings, and I find out that for year-over-year job growth, Kankakee, Illinois ranked #1 out of 394 areas in the United States. Kankakee County is considered a Metropolitan Statistical Area, MSA, and we ranked #1 for job growth in the last year. And if you look at the next column, we ranked number 18 in job growth over the course of the last 5 years. But I think the third column is almost the most important one, because that shows that Kankakee County is ranked #10 for our economic strength going forward. In other words, the numbers that this company put together, looking at job growth, at infrastructure, at money that's being invested, at things that are taking place in our area, they ranked the Kankakee MSA the #10 strongest economy for job growth and for work going forward. So these are things that we've never appeared on the radar in these magazines before, and now all of a sudden we're in 3 categories, #1 in one category, and being #1 in something like that is just something that we've never seen before. So the job growth that's happening here is real. It's being recognized throughout the state. It's being recognized throughout the United States. This is a magazine that came out last summer. It's called Intersect Illinois. Intersect Illinois is the private economic development organization for the state of Illinois. The gentleman that's pictured there is Mark Peterson. He's the CEO of Intersect Illinois. He's been in Kankakee a number of times. He was asked, what are the 3 most important economic development projects in Illinois in 2018? And you can't see the thing because it's so small, but the #1 economic development project in the state of Illinois for 2018 was CSL Bearing in Kankakee County. The number two that he said was Nucor Steel's expansion in Kankakee County. And the third was a Facebook expansion in downtown Chicago. Now, who would have ever thought that Kankakee County was going to have two of the top three economic development activities in the state of Illinois just a few years ago? So, like I say, things are happening. The recognition is starting to come. We're starting to be, identified throughout the area. And this gentleman, who's, like I say, the head of the economic development group for the state, realizes that there's activity and things that are happening here. This is the Nucor announcement. If you go out by Nucor now, you go up on I-57, you'll start to see, you see steel that's going up in the area. A year ago, they announced that they were going to spend $180 million here. They're going to have 75 new jobs, 2-year completion time, making huge investments in the area. And like I say, and we're in the middle of it now. I talked to the general manager, Johnny Jacobs, just yesterday, and he sent me pictures of the progress. There's steel in the air. They're hoping that this project is going to be done hopefully later on this year. They're already in process of hiring the people so they can be trained when this new facility comes online. So this is an international company making huge investments here in Kankakee County, and it's a big deal. And then we all know, the CSL announcement. A couple years ago, when Bunge closed their facility, it was a tragic, situation where a couple hundred people lost their job. But in retrospect now, it's going to turn out to be, one of the great things that ever happened manufacturing-wise in Kankakee County. They are announcing, or they announced that they are going to do a 1.8 million square foot addition, creating a world-class pharmaceutical campus. They already own 75 acres at their current facility. They purchased 75 acres from the Bunge facility, so they are creating a 150-acre world-class pharmaceutical campus that is going to probably be one of the best pharmaceutical facilities in the world. This is currently the largest pharmaceutical expansion in the world, and it's happening in Kankakee County. This, folks, is our version of Amazon, and we didn't have to give any tax breaks to get it. This is going to have more of a transformational impact on Kankakee County than Amazon will in Washington or New York, the two places that they went to. So all the hype and the hubbub about getting Amazon, that's great, and hey, good for them. But this happening in Kankakee County with the amount of investment that they're going to make in the billions of dollars, they've already spent close to $500 million just on the buildings and the improvements that they've done already. But there's going to be billions of dollars spent over the course of the next 10 to 12 years. And that's just the construction phase. Then the good jobs start. That's when the pharmaceutical jobs come. That's where the jobs where people move here from other areas. They are currently bringing in people from all over the world to work at this facility, which is going to have a trickle-down effect, not only just for the for the workers here, but for the housing industry, for restaurants, for condominiums, for apartments, for all kinds of things that we haven't been able to come to grips with yet. If you go by there now, you'll start to see there's a little trailer village that's being set up. That's just for the construction companies that are coming in, that are setting up shop. And we've got some construction companies that have come here, and because they realize that this is a 10 to 12-year venture, they're not going to be operating out of trailers. They're actually buying buildings in the community and remodeling the buildings. We've got other HVAC and electrical companies that are expanding. So this is going to have a huge, major transformational impact on the county, the likes that we've never seen before. And again, we didn't have to give any big tax money to get it. Sure, they'll take advantage of the enterprise zone and some of the other things that are already in existence, but this is something that they made the decision because they were here, they saw the workforce here, they were content with what was happening here, and they are making this decision that to expend this kind of money in Kankakee County. So these two companies making this kind of investment is a huge deal that, again, it's put us on the radar. And then on a different note, Urban Farmer, a company in Manteno out of Diversitech, just recently purchased the vacant Marisont building. Again, another situation where a couple years ago, Marisont vacated a huge facility. A couple hundred people lost their job. Another tragic day because a company left town. But we took it as an opportunity to find other people to occupy that building. And Urban Farmer is a 3-year-old company. They make gluten-free pizzas and a variety of other frozen products. They just recently they expanded the building they have at Diversitech. Now they've purchased this new building. Within the next couple of years, they're going to be one of the largest frozen pizza producers in the United States. They're going to be hiring over 100 people in the next couple months, which will bring their workforce up to over 200 people. So whenever we see something tragic where some company is leaving, we can't focus on the fact that that's happening. We have to focus on the fact, okay, what do we do with it now? Let's be able to try to make something, that's even better a couple years down the road. And that's what's happened with the Bungie facility. That's what's happened with the Marisont facility. And that's what's hopefully, if other facilities come available, that's what'll happen there too. Then the next slide I put there is just to let you know that it's not all CSL, Nucor, and Urban Farmer. I mean, we've got all kinds of international and huge companies throughout the Kankakee County, and except Sears Holdings, every one of them is doing pretty well. They're all growing. I go and I visit most of these facilities. They're all hiring people. They're all looking at expanding. So the industrial base in Kankakee County is doing great. Like I say, with the exception of Sears, and we all read about what's going on with them. Nobody knows what's going to happen there. But if they do end up closing down, we have to look at that opportunity with the warehouses that are up in the Manteno area to try to bring in somebody new and to try to do something different. But we're kind of holding our breath on that and seeing what happens. But the other companies that are listed there, even Bungie, I had people say, well, you need to update that slide because Bungie left. Well, they did. They left the Route 50 plant, but they still have 2 facilities. They own JR Short Milling and Heartland Harvest, so there's still a presence in Kankakee County. We also have the Bourbonnais Parkway interchange that just opened up a couple months ago. Only took 20 years to get it done, but now it's done, and we've got over 3,000 acres for potential development, 1,400 acres there that are an industrial TIF for the village of Bourbonnais. And we're getting a lot of different calls about the possibility of buildings being built there. I suspect within a year, you'll see activity there on a couple of the corners. There'll be some things that'll be taking place. Like I say, that stuff takes a while, and it was difficult to show that property obviously until it opened up because you couldn't even get to the facility. But now that it's open, there is some activity that's happening. Things that the Alliance is going to be working on over the course of the next year is several different development zones, areas that I've just spoke about. The Bourbonnais Parkway development zone, the Bradley Route 50 corridor, and also the Kankakee Riverfront Opportunity Zone. Those are things that we're going to be highlighting and working on over the course of 2019. And also, activities to support the redevelopment of the Northfield Square Mall. As good as industrial things are doing, we all know that the retail sector is suffering, and so we're trying to come up with a plan, working with the owners of the mall to come up with some ideas on how to revamp that and turn that into a facility that is more productive. We all know that it's probably never going to be full and never going to be all retail again. That's just not the way things are going. But there's other things that we can do to potentially redevelop that mall. And so you'll see the slide there. When you go to our website, we're changing our website. We're going to have different zones that are going to be on there. That just happens to be the one from the Kankakee Opportunity Zone. But we're in the middle of updating the website. And when you go there, you'll be able to click on each zone and find out all the things that are available, the incentives that are available, what type of packages can be put together. The Future Energy Jobs Act, that's another thing that's happening obviously in Kankakee County. A lot of solar farms that have come through the county for zoning. There's a lot of the energy credits that are going to be awarded in January or February throughout the state. In a lot of the 40 or 50 or 60 zoning hearings that have taken place here, some of them hopefully will actually get built in 2019. Some of the construction will start. So a lot of things happening in the alternative energy front. KCC is a leader in alternative energy education, and they're actually putting a solar farm on their campus where they'll be able to get electricity and also be able to train. We also continue to keep updating our workkankakee.org website. You know, the workforce is obviously a big deal now. We've got an awful lot of jobs, and we don't have all the people to fill them. So if you know anybody that's looking for jobs, we keep updating the local jobs on workkankakee.org. There's information on there for students, for people, anybody looking for a job. What, you know, if I want to be a certain career, what type of education or training do I need to take? That's all on that website that they can go there and try to see their career pathways and what they need to do in order to get themselves a job. We've got so many, 4.8% unemployment. We need to get those people into the 4,000 jobs that are open. And the employers are willing to work with us now because they need the employees bad. The employee situation is even starting to affect the investment. We've got companies in Grant Park that I met that would like to put additions onto their facility, but they've got 40 or 50 openings right now that they can't fill, and their corporate headquarters is not going to let them add on when they can't fill the jobs that they got. So we need more people. We need more people to get into the workforce. The Alliance board meetings are on those dates. They're open to the public. Every time that we have a meeting, it's at Olivet Nazarene University. It's 7:30 in the morning. We get everybody out of there by 9 o'clock because we realize they all have to go to work. But we usually have some type of speaker to give some educational presentation, and then I give a 15 or 20-minute report about what's taking place. Anybody is welcome to come to those meetings, and they say you can send us an email, let us know. We'll put you on the email list to let you know about the meetings. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions or get out of the way.
I just had one before we get to the board. More of a statement about conversations we had for some of these employers, and one of the limiting factors on a lot of this growth and expansion is lack of infrastructure, particularly on transportation. And I wanted to get your opinion on that. Is that what you're sensing as well? That's the only roadblock we see?
Right. I mean, we're in a great location transportation-wise, but we obviously a few years ago the airport kind of stalled and the Ileana Expressway stalled. If those different projects got started up again, it would certainly get an awful lot of eyes looking down in this direction. The I-55 corridor and the areas around the city, they're getting expensive, and they're getting more full with warehouses. People are starting to look down this way, but if the information went out that there was going to be some new infrastructure facilities built down here, we'd get a lot more calls.
And that includes Route 50 and Armour Road and those types of things.
Absolutely, and the county, working with us and trying to help us do some enhancements on Route 50. We want to be able to get these CSL employees that are coming from all over the world, when they get off the exit at Route 50 and I-57, we'd like to have a updated Route 50 area to greet them, to go into their world-class pharmaceutical facility. Sure. So yes, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and there's a lot of planning that needs to get started on that.
Sure, and just so the board knows, that's been the top of the needs list for transportation infrastructure for 15 years.
Right.
And probably 1A was the exit at Court Street. I would say that was the other one. So that Eastgate Industrial Park could be, it's hard for trucks to get up to speed coming out of Eastgate. So that was, it was 1 and 1A were the two, I believe, that were up there. So I just want to mention that that's one of the reasons you'll see another item on the agenda later, is to make sure when this capital bill comes out, it's essential to fill all those parking spaces at that expansion at CSL. That's the major ask. So any other questions, please? Sorry, I can't have them from the crowd. I apologize. Is there anything from the board? I apologize. It's not proper. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I'd like to thank Mr. Nugent for a fine presentation. Anything that I saw there that isn't here, I can contact you and receive.
Right. We will actually send, I'll send everybody's email this afternoon. I'll send them a copy of the presentation. That way you can, go through it at your leisure.
Because I don't see the meetings are not listed down there.
Right. That's just some of the stuff. I didn't make copies of the whole presentation. I figured I'm saving the paper. I'm just going to email it to you later on.
Okay.
I didn't want to send it to you first, because then none of this would be new for you.
Sure. Mrs. Peters, did you have something? Yes.
I'll go ahead and ask a question about Ricky Rockets and Tractor Supply.
Well, as far as Ricky Rockets is concerned, they obviously, started construction and stopped, and I have no further information as to, you know, that they are going to proceed in any way. Now, I'm not their main contact. They work with the city of Kankakee, but obviously you can go by there every day and there's nothing has changed. So I have no news on that. And the same thing with Tractor Supply. That's within the city of Kankakee, and they are working with them. But I think that's a great thing to bring another national retailer to the south side of Kankakee. And I suspect that, you know, from what I've been told, meeting with the city, is that, that's pretty much a done deal and going to happen over the course of the next several months.
Mr. Lejess.
Yeah, Tim, I was wondering with the new 6,000 interchange, has there been any interest in the Cigna building on 45?
There has. We've had a couple different people. I've actually shown it to twice myself. Once to a pharmaceutical company out of Washington State, and we didn't get that one. Actually, they haven't made a decision, but they decided that they're not coming here. And then there was another company that was looking at possibly leasing it for a couple-year period for a special project, and that's still. They have not made a decision yet. There's also been some discussion about, you know, selling that. We've had a potential buyer that looked at that and turning it into a business park instead of having it be one big facility for, you know, one company. Have it be, you know, a place where potentially, you know, a bank could have their office, and a realty agency, and a medical facility, and a coffee shop, and have 5 or 6 different things in there because it is such a huge building. So there's discussions, but nothing concrete as of yet.
Mr. Snipes.
You all might have discussed it, but with all the progress, I see 318, 315. However, I know that 312 was somewhere into that, and considering that's the main thoroughfare of the city of Kankakee, where's the status as to the reconstruction or development?
That is still in the engineering phase, and that's still in the process of moving along. But just like the 318 Bourbonnais Parkway, you know, that took 20 years to go through the process to completion, the city of Kankakee's project at 312 is in the, it's in the hopper, and it's going through, I believe it's phase 1 engineering, but the Illinois Department of Transportation has got a process that they go through, and then once they get all the things they need, then they wait for funding. So it's in the process, it's in the hopper, but I can't tell you that, it's on schedule for this year, next year, or the following year, because they've got a number of different things. They've got the railroad overpass on Brookmont Boulevard is also a project that needs to have some attention. So they've got a number of different projects that are in the DOT SKU. But it's really up to them.
Yep. Anything else from the board? Excellent. Thank you for your time, Tim. Appreciate it. Moving on, under certificates of recognition, Joni Hart, 15 years at the Sheriff's Department. There he is. Come on up to the front here, if you like. Mike is yours, sir.
Good morning. It is certainly my privilege to introduce to you Joni Hart. I should say Detective Joni Hart, who has been with us now 15 years. Joni Hart, at the present time, is a detective. She's been a detective for the past 5 years. She is also involved with the United States Marshal Fugitive Task Force, which is certainly a benefit to those of us in Kankakee County. And she does an outstanding job for us, and we are certainly glad we have her. Joni, congratulations.
Also, we have Michelle Bauer-Tim, 15 years at the Sheriff's Department.
She is not here.
She is not here?
She is not here. She is a correctional officer with us and does an outstanding job in, as you all know, very tough conditions. So,
thank you for your service, Crystal Crumweedy.
That was good.
I got it right.
That was good.
Wow,
that was good.
Buy a lottery ticket.
Crystal as well has been here for 15 years. We were fortunate back in 2003 when she moved back to the area from Arizona, where she had experience in Department of Corrections out in Arizona. Right now, she is one of our classification officers, and as you probably heard me talk, classification in a jail setting is very important for us because Quite frankly, Crystal, I think, knows more about the families, the girlfriends, the wives, or in some cases both, of our inmates and our detainees. And what that allows us to do is separate individuals in the jail. And as you know, we don't have very few altercations inside our jail because we mix people the wrong way. So they do a great job. Classification does a great job, and Crystal is a big part of that. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. And finally, Drew Parsons, 10 years at the Public Defender's Office. You join us up here if somebody might want to stand in presenting that. Mr. Rowe, maybe?
So I do not work with Drew because Drew is on the other side. But seriously, I've worked for a number of years with Drew Parsons, sometimes alongside him and now opposite sides. Drew is a strong advocate for his clients through and through. I've never seen anyone else argue the Constitution in traffic court. But Drew has made those arguments. I've watched him, and he's done it successfully. 10 years is a long time to be a public defender. That's very tough work. Sometimes it can probably seem like a losing battle, but he makes sure that everyone's rights are protected in our courthouse every single day. So for that, Drew, thank you.
Thank you, Drew.
Alrighty. All right, moving on. Minutes of last meeting, December 11th, 2018. Need a motion to approve the minutes. Mr. Byrne with a motion, second Mr. Payton. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Under Claims Committee reports for November 2018.
Mr. Chairman and members of the County Board, your Committee on County Claims would beg leave to report they have examined the following claims presented and recommend payment. The clerk is hereby authorized and directed to issue orders to the several claimants payable out of the funds as follows. The Highway Fund, $483,017.87. All other funds, $794,589.27. For a total for the month of November 2018, $1,277,607.14. The General Fund.
Sorry.
$2,048,826.31. All other funds, $5,443,037.76. For a total for the month of November 2018, $7,491,864.07.
So, okay, all right, put the Claims Committee report. That takes a motion and a second. Who wants to make the motion to approve? Mr. Eckhoff, second Mr. Featherling. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Roll call.
Oh, roll call vote. I apologize. I don't have my little cheat sheet in front of me. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Legess. Aye. Mr. Hess. Aye. Mr. Tholen. Aye. Mrs. Polk. Aye. Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Byrne. Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Zenz.
Aye.
Ms. Haas.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Swanson. Ms. Zakulo.
Aye.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Under Department Reports, if we could get those read into the record, please.
The County Collector's Report, monthly report. Current tax account, $3,152,912.13. Total cash in bank and investments for the month ending November 2018, $3,193,172.99. County Treasurer's monthly report for November 2018. Total cash and investments, $3,193,172.99. The total in cash, checking accounts in cash, $14,360,581.89. General fund deficit of $3,653,620.73. Coroner's monthly report for November 2018. Total calls 118. Coroner's cases 22, autopsies 7, toxicology 7, outside autopsies 1, x-rays 1, cremations 58. Total fees in the coroner's office for the month of November 2018, $5,578.76. Circuit clerk cash book for the month of November 2018, total disbursed $408,431.34. Recorder's monthly report for November 2018, disbursement fees paid to the county treasurer, $101,072.12. County clerk's monthly report for November 2018, total fees, $25,701.49. Animal control monthly report for November 2018, total fees, $30,206. The IPTIP building fund, $285.71. Total animals handled, 76. The Kankakee County monthly building division report for October 2018, total permits, 88. Fees of $58,408. Total extra fees, $4,205 for a total of $62,613. Monthly resolution list, total to the county, $123,859.
Alrighty, thank you, sir. So I need a motion to approve the department reports. Mr. Legess, second. Mr. Tholen, any discussion? This one is a voice vote. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Under the consent agenda, is there anything that needs to be removed from the consent agenda? Anything specifically removed? Ms. Dunbar?
I'd like item 2 removed, and I had a question about item 3. There's a Scrivener's error. Do we need to remove it, or can we just fix it? It says her instead of him.
That can just be correct.
All right, we can just correct that.
Thank you.
All right, so 2 is removed. Anything else? Any others? All right.
Is that the one that you got the issue up on, and the one that Mr. Tony Brownsville spoke about?
That one's already been removed.
Those have been removed?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's coming up under PZA. Pilot Township, number 22. It's under later in the agenda. Alrighty, Mr. Hess?
Thank you. I don't want anything removed, Chairman, but I will be abstaining on number 1848 again. Solar farm in the Moments Township.
Number 18?
1848.
Oh, okay, sure. The second one? Okay, we'll note that in the record that on the combined, it's an abstention for you. Okay, I need a motion to combine and approve then, would be in order at this time. Mr. Washington, a second. Mr. Eckhoff, this will be a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Legess.
Aye.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Tholen.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Byrne. Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Zenz.
Aye.
Ms. Haas. Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Swanson. Ms. Zakulo.
Aye.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye.
That's not been read in yet.
It's not been read in?
No.
Okay, would you like to?
I can do that.
Does the board have a problem if he reads it into the record after the fact without revoting? Okay, that's a head nod. I think we're okay.
Declaration of surplus equipment, Sheriff's Department. Appointment of Mike Lahaney to the Ethics Commission. Reappointment of Lynn Kukup to the McGillivray Special Drainage District. Reappointment of Patrick O'Brien to the Essex Township Fire Protection Board. ZBA case 1844, special use permit 121-99.c.34, solar farm, section 02, Aroma Township, Sunrise Development LLC. ZBA case 1848, special use permit, section 121-99.c.34, solar farm, In the A1 Agriculture District, Section 17, Momence Township, SVCSG Momence 2 LLC. ZBA Case 1849, Special Use Permit, Section 121-99.c.34, Solar Farm. In the A1 Agriculture District, Section 34, St. Anne Township, SVCSG St. Anne 2 LLC. ZBA Case 1851, Variance Section 121-286.c.1, Driveway Spacing, and Section 121.99.34.e, Lot Width, and a Special Use Permit, Section 121-99.c.34, Solar Farm, in the A1 Agriculture District, Section 03, Pilot Township, USS Goodrich Solar, LLC. ZBA Case 1852, rezoning from R1 Single Family Residential District to A1 Agricultural District, and a Special Use Permit, Section 121-99.c.34, Solar Farm, in the A1 Agriculture District, Sections 27, St. Anne Township, USS St. Anne Solar, LLC. ZBA Case 18-53, Special Use Permit, Section 121-99.c.34, Solar Farm, in the A1 Agriculture District, Section 17, Yellowhead Township, USS Campbell Solar, LLC. ZBA Case 18-54, rezoning from I1 General Industrial District to A1 Agriculture District, and a Special Use Permit, Section 121-99.c.34, Solar Farm, in the A1 Agriculture District, Section 34, Kankakee Township, USS Bloom Solar, LLC.
Okay, thank you, sir. Apologize for doing that backwards. So that is in the record. Under communities, actually, consideration of number 2. Could we get that entire resolution read into the record? I apologize, but I think it's important to get this one down.
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois. Establish of a county board policy eliminating bonus payouts. Whereas Kankakee County strives to provide its employees with a market competitive compensation package, and whereas the budget of the county should be as transparent as possible as it relates to its payroll expenditures, and whereas to that end the payment of bonuses should be prohibited, and whereas the Executive Committee at the regularly scheduled meeting of December 20th, 2018, upon review, discussion, and consideration, recommends the County Board adopt the attached policy prohibiting the payment of employee bonuses. And now therefore be it resolved by the Kankakee County Board that it shall be the policy of Kankakee County not to pay its employees a bonus unless such payment is made expressly part of a collectively bargained agreement, and the attached policy shall be inserted into the Kankakee County Policy and Procedures Manual.
And everybody has a copy of that. So to start with, is there a motion to approve this measure? Ms. Parker, and then second by Mr. Smith. And is there any questions from the floor? Ms. Dunbar?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wondered what the history is. Like, have departments regularly given bonuses? Is it an annual thing? Is it just at the discretion of the department heads? Can you just give a little background?
The only bonuses that I am aware of that were ever given were done within collectively bargained offices outside of those contracts. And they were noted in management letters and audits as not being allowable in the past. That happened before I was here, and that's why it was specifically noted. If it isn't a collective bargain agreement, that is true. But I can find no history of a bonus being paid out to anybody in that situation. We had a case where somebody had, as a part of a contractual separation agreement, they had paid out sick time. That was against county policy, but it was an elected department head, and it was substantial, but there's nothing the county could do after extensive legal counsel because that's part of a separation agreement. It wasn't a bonus. So it's semantics, but to answer your question specifically, no, I couldn't find anything where a bonus was paid. Ms. Peters.
You mentioned, thank you, Mr. Chairman, you mentioned that it covers employees under collective bargaining that would be in a union. But not all employees are in the unions,
well,
or are all county employees?
Those are the only allowable ones if they are part of an a collective bargain agreement.
So if you're in a union, you may get a bonus, and that they're exempt from this?
Right, if they've negotiated that into their agreement. So everyone else, yeah, if the board's already and approved it. So if it's been negotiated and approved. Now, also consider this. Elected department heads they're not bound by our policy and procedure manual. They can still give one if they want to. Okay, I just want to make sure everybody's clear with that because we need to stay in our lane sometimes and realize that the statutes allow these, whether it's, anybody that's elected department head can still give that bonus if it's within their budget and all of that other kind of stuff. That's where we come in at the end of that. But and this, much like the flowers thing that we went through before, we can have a policy, but those department heads are not bound to that policy because of their statutory authority. This is just getting the policy on the books that we can't do in administration, and I would hope that other departments would follow with that precedent, but really we have no teeth as a board. I want to make sure we're clear on that. So
I'm just, thank you. Just gonna clarify, so if you are an elected official and then you can give bonuses even if your employees aren't in a union with a contract that allows for bonuses?
yes, they can, and if they can go against this policy, correct.
Okay, so who is this policy, who's bound by this policy then?
All administration, as I just said, all administration, and we hope that every other elected department head follows that as well. Just like the flowers policy we did 3-4 months ago with no fanfare. Mr. Snipes.
I see where the county is going. The issue is I'm kind of disturbed by restricting the non-union employees of the county when union employees get the benefit as well. The purpose is we're just saying our elected, I guess the individuals that we appoint has to abide by the rules, but the elected officials don't have to abide by the rules. I think it becomes a point of disparity. I don't want to say equal rights or whatever. Certainly we have the right to put the policy there, but the only reason I cannot be in favor of it is it's not equalized when it comes to me in a position discriminating against non-union employees and county employees on top of that don't get the same opportunity, even though we have not done it. So I question, why are we doing it if it's not ever been done?
So I can address the disparity issue. So there's no disparity here because no employee that falls under administration gets a bonus under this policy unless the county board approves it. Union members will only get a bonus under this policy if the board has approved a collective bargaining agreement that authorizes that bonus. And a non-union member will only get a bonus under this policy if it's approved by the Kankakee County Board. So there's no disparity on that between union or non-union.
Well, I was hearing that they stated that the elected officials are not bound by the county policy.
So this policy, correct, it only involves administration, non-elected offices, and that's because state statute allows elected officials to control their budget. County board makes that appropriation, and the elected official spends it as they see fit for their office. So the board has no authority to tell the elected officials what they can do on a line item basis in their departments.
But we will tell the individuals who are up under us what to do and not do.
Under administration,
Right.
State law gives you that authority.
Mr. Legess.
But we do have some authority over the elected officials, because if they do give out the bonuses, we can the following year reduce their budget by the amounts of these bonuses if they're abusing it.
While I don't want to see the punitive actions or the way that we do things,
I'm being realistic.
we do control budgets and the proper use of budgets, and if it's conceived unnecessary, and that's where this came from, it was deemed unnecessary to take borrowed money and give that out as a bonus payout, but that's where this came from. So I see your point, and the reason this happened, we can't see where this has ever happened before, and I don't know how it in the past with bonuses from elected officials. Mr. Hess.
Thank you, Chairman. I think on the collective bargaining, I think that came in, correct me if I'm wrong, instead of paying back pay, they paid out a lump sum to individuals. Is that where that came into?
Well, this only involves, first, this is only going forward.
Right.
And anything in that agreement, that is labeled as a bonus. So sometimes there could be bonuses for health-related bonuses, no smoking, like
okay.
Member Siroy said, or a number of other things. So, but again, they're only receiving that bonus, as it would be called in the CBA, if it's been approved by the board.
Mr. Washington.
I don't call changing the budget to reflect the changes that may occur with a department head that does not fall under this policy. I don't call that punitive. I call that the county acting properly in utilizing the funds that are provided through the tax collection by the county board. To me, if someone has the funding set aside in their budget to give out bonuses, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that in the county. If something happens outside in another business or something, that's a different area altogether. But when you talk about using county funds to pay out bonuses, and it's not an even playing field all the way across, and it really isn't, then I don't think we are being punitive if we correct the budget the following year to adjust to those funds.
Thank you. Any other first-time statements along those lines? Mr. Snipes, did you have a second time, please?
Yeah, I guess my issue is let's define bonuses, because what I'm looking at is anything over and above. So if you have a health care where you tell the individuals, if you are not, if you're not, in order to stay well, we can offer these benefits or whatever case may be, or what they consider to be this extra bonus. If you take this and you haven't used your insurance, blah, 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 there's a bonus that's there. So I'm thinking
they define it in the policy.
So it's going to be more defined in the policy.
It's already in your packet.
Okay. Well, I didn't see all of it up in there, so I'm just seeing a definitive defined bonuses.
All right. Any other comments on this? It's not a spending money thing. It's a not spending money thing. So I believe we can do a voice vote. Do we have a motion in a second? Want to re-verify? It's been a while. Okay, we have a motion in a second. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed?
Nay.
All right, we have 2 opposed. You got those noted? Do you have those noted through the 2 opposed? Okay. Excuse me, motion carries. Moving on. Under the Finance Committee, number 14, please, if we can get the title read into the record.
14?
Oh, Community Service, I'm sorry. We'll go to 13 first. How about that? Julie's like, what's going on here? The resolution authorizing intergovernmental agreement for animal control services with the village of Shabance. I need a motion to approve that, if I could, please, before we get going. Ms. Parker, second. Ms. Polk, is there any... Let's get at least the first. That's exactly what I just read. Okay, it's in the record. Okay. Is there any questions about this? Any comments, Mr. Legesse?
Yeah, I was just curious. Since Shabance is like half in Iroquois and half in Kankakee County, how does that work? Do you still do the whole county?
If Mr. Rowe could answer that.
It only applies to the county side.
Pardon?
It only applies to Kankakee County's portion of Shabance.
She said the whole city, the whole village.
Mr. Quinn?
We have a disagreement between lawyers.
Yeah, we are not, I mean, I can tell you, because if animal control goes into Iroquois County side of Shabance, we're not going to be prosecuting any of their tickets or offenses here in the Kankakee County Courthouse.
Oh, okay.
So if they do something in the Iroquois side, they could, of course, send that out to Iroquois County.
Okay, that's what I was concerned about.
Any clarifications necessary?
Yeah, no, I think Jim's got it on the head. Yeah. Jim's got it. We can't prosecute anything that goes in Iroquois County. That's obviously Iroquois County State's Attorney's Office's responsibility. Julie's department can go in and enforce things like running at large citations, but those may have to be distributed between the 2 offices in terms of how to prosecute it.
Right.
Yep.
But within the village of Shabance, Julie has authority to go in and enforce their ordinances as they're written.
And they're both within the same judicial circuit, obviously.
Right. So it's, yeah.
Yep. Mr. Kinzinger.
has anybody done a cost analysis as to what the cost or might be to the Kankakee County to take over this when it's a $2.25 per capita payment?
At this point, how do I put this? And Julie, you can speak to this a little bit better, but right now there is no agreement in place, and the per capita is new revenue, and any expense does not come from the general fund. That comes from animal control. You realize they're two separate funds. It's a corporate fund versus the general fund. So if there is any expense, it falls to that. Okay, I think maybe if there is overtime, there may be some increased in the pension fund, you know, through IMRF and things like that. But we can do that after year one and take a look at this, but there's really there's no way of knowing because we don't know how many animals they will engage.
Can there be an expiration to this so that we have to take a look at it in a couple of years?
What is the expiration on this, Julie?
This is an annual agreement.
Okay. Okay. It's mainly to get the ball going, and then we take a look at this as we go, you know. Okay, so any other questions about this in particular? All right, I believe this can be a voice vote as well. Let's do a roll call just to make sure. It has to be roll call because we may expend extra.
I'd like to ask Julie where that says it's an annual agreement.
Do we have the contract in front of us?
Yeah, I'm looking at it.
You didn't bring it down today?
I've got it here. It is. It's correct. It is. The term of this contract shall be for 1 year and shall be renewal annually, automatically, unless 30 days notice of termination is given.
Okay.
That's fine.
Yes, Mr. Seroy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Kinzier, to clarify, the animal control is trying to set up agreements with all villages and communities that they don't have the actual right to go in and to perform those services of animal control. So, oh, check.
Sorry.
All right, here we go. Thank you. Mr. Kinder, animal control their goal is to set agreements up with all the villages in our county to be able to provide services inside that village and be able to then have somebody that we can charge for such service that we perform in that village. Because if we get called to a village that we don't have an agreement with, we might not be able to charge that person or persons that has the problem with the animal. In order, is that not right, Julie? We want to get these agreements with every community so that we have authority to go into these communities and do your animal control?
Yes, essentially, we're looking to get the villages and municipalities to come into a partnership and intergovernmental agreement following the same ordinance would be ideal, so that every citizen, whether you're in the unincorporated area or in a village or city or municipality, everybody's playing by the same rules and being held accountable in the same way. Does that answer that question?
Follow up, Mr. Kinzinger, and then we'll, if anyone else.
The contract period term is fine, but there needs to be something in here about on an annual renewal basis, we have the right to review the fee. Because we'll be paying $2.20, or they'll be paying $2.25 for the next 20 years, unless they come back and do this whole process. We should have some language that allows animal control to review the fee, and it's automatically renewable. But right now, it's either they pay $2.25 and it renews automatically, and then it has to come back. I'd like to see some language change under contract.
You know, we had a similar situation with the use of the juvenile facility in Joliet. We had like how many years was it? 30-year?
I believe it was 30 years, but 20 years.
30-year agreement, 20 years that they had agreed to the finances on, and then that last 10 they hadn't. And it really put the county in a bad position because we were stuck in an agreement, and then we couldn't reach agreement on the amounts for a period of time there. So that long term, that would have been a problem. So what this contract does, it allows the county to say, if in a year you're not happy with the amount, it gives you an out of the entire agreement. And then, of course, we'd have to renegotiate that amount to get a new agreement. But we did want to protect our ability to withdraw from it completely, as opposed to tying us in and then having to negotiate an amount while we're in the middle of a contract.
Yeah. And that's, so it'll be up to community services to put it on their calendar and Julie to put it on hers to come back and do that math, if you will, to say this is working out for us, it's working out for the village. They would like to renew, we would suggest we renew, that type of thing. Any other questions? Mr. Hess?
Thank you, Chair. Then we need to get something, if there is another village comes in, that they're all at one time, so we're not doing one month, one next month, you know, try to stagger it so it's all.
I think he's volunteering for a committee.
No, I'm not volunteering.
Believe me, I understand.
You know,
yeah,
maybe the next one, if it's a month from now, we make it an 11th month agreement, renewable at January 1st, whatever it is.
Sure, and I'm not sure where Buckingham is in that whole timeline. That's our only other agreement we have right now. Yeah. We may take a look at that and lining it up, like with health insurance, the first of the year. Yeah, okay. It's a good suggestion. I'll say we have a motion and a second. Is there any other questions? Alrighty, let's do a roll call vote on that one, please.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. LaJess.
Aye.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Tholen. Aye. Mrs. Polk. Aye. Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Zenz.
Aye.
Ms. Haas.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Washington. I'm sorry, Mr. Swanson.
Again?
Ms. Zakulo.
Not that big.
Ms. Zakulo? Okay. Mr. Featherling?
Yes.
Mr. Wheeler?
Aye. Motion carries. Alrighty, moving on. Finance, number 14. Could I get the title read into the record, please? I'd take your job, I'm sorry.
Authorization to pay bills.
Basically, it's an authorizing the county board chairman to approve claims payment before final consideration of the finance committee. Before we get started, can I get a motion to approve before we get going? Mr. Hess, second. Mr. Lear. If you look at, you know, the resolution in itself, it does cite all of the state statutes that allow this type of arrangement, well, to occur as it already has been, but also to get it codified going forward. You know, this has gone through the full legal vetting process, and I guess at this point, I just want to make sure the board knows that they will not lose any oversight. They will still be looking at all of the bills and be able to ask any questions. As we had heard, we don't micromanage line items within budgets on elected officials. We look at the budgetary number. We have a right to question anything if something's be found to be fraudulent. Anything that will be looked at, or at least authorized to pay, will have already gone through the audit process. So the auditor will have looked at it and had a chance to question everything. It's the stuff sitting in a pile waiting to be paid. And so that's the way we've been operating for the past, I don't know, 5 years, because we've never had enough money to pay all the bills at once. So we have to be able to choose what needs to be paid today until more money comes in. And by the way, we're still in that position. Until we have a $6-7 billion surplus, we don't have to borrow money. This is always going to come up. So I want to make sure the floor has a chance to ask any questions of me, the state's attorney, along this whole situation. So please, yes, Ms. Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you summarize some of the discussion you had in finance on this? Or was this executive?
It was finance. Okay. There was a video. I mean, I don't know if I could summarize it. We discussed it at length and basically said that the resolution had to be drawn up by the state's attorney's office, but the goal was to keep the money moving, keep our vendors paid, our mostly local people who we tend to string out for a long period of time. We have one meeting a month. We're not a city where there's 2 meetings, and there isn't the other statutory obligations with the other elected officials to not have their budgets micromanaged on a line item basis. So we're vastly different than a municipal government. Whole sets of rules, different rules apply. But that was, I wished I could summarize it better, but it did get talked about. Mr. Lear, do you have any thoughts? You were sharing that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think in regard to the resolution, there's two things that I would lift up. In the second whereas, we noticed that all of these claims are going to go through the statutory review process, and so that's a practice we've been using for, and so we continue to use that. I think the fact that this requires 2 elected officials to be looking at this for approval is an important part of the concept, and one that deserves support. So with that, actually there'd be the third. And of course, as you've already pointed out, the last further resolve says any claim paid under the resolution and later rejected will be reimbursed by the original claimant. So I think there are a number of appropriate processes that are established by this.
Mm-hmm. And so the board knows that with the procedure right now is, and it kind of has been, that when these bills come up to be paid, I'm talking to Mr. Siroy, I'm talking to Mr. Lear. Here's the bills that are up for payment. We got to get these out the door. Do you concur? So it's not me sitting up there on pontificating. It's one of those things where there is a discussion. And in the past, there was a group of finance committee members that was doing this, and Mr. McCarty would remind them that committee said, hey, you guys know what's going on. You handle it for us. And so that authority to do that has existed in the past. So I just wanted to make sure that was on the table as well. So any other questions about this? Mr. Snipes?
Just have one. We have committees, I guess, for a reason. If the bills are coming up, I don't want it to be almost a unilateral decision to say, we'll do this and don't do this, and then it comes back. Well, the county board gave the authority basically for this to be done. When we're looking at these particular bills, it's always good to have several eyes, so that way it's not one person kind of saying, you guys looked at it and we come up to this agreement. I think we need to keep it more kind of committee oriented, even if you have to deal with a subcommittee with you and someone on that to kind of review it and then move it forward. It will be more so, I don't want it to come back as a black eye to the county that says, well, these bills was moved forward, who did it? And then you'll say, well, I did it, but I talked to a few guys or whatever, and they say, where's the county board? What did they authorize? I would feel more comfortable with authorizing the chair with a subcommittee to, if you want to do this, to kind of be the oversight, and then it's a vote of the minds, because there might be some that has some reservations, and if they do, we kind of need to know that from more than just 1 or 2 people, but something that's kind of authorized by the county board to be like an oversight, or that committee that basically moves it forward. Other than that, why not just leave it at the finance?
Just so you know, I can think of 6 or 7 different sets of eyes that will be on this already as this resolution stands. And it doesn't circumvent any process. So I'm not sure where that's coming from, where 1 or 2 people, because it will already have gone through the entire audit process with the auditor's office, finance department, treasurer, back to the auditor's office. This isn't something that's outside of that, per what the resolution says.
Okay, so why are we doing the resolution if that's the case, is what I'm saying?
Exactly, because we keep getting continual complaints that we're doing this outside of anything on paper to do it, even though the board has authorized it per ILCS 5/1 6006.
Okay.
The board has already designated that to a subcommittee of the finance in the past, and that's how we operate until they said, you guys got a better grasp of it, would you please handle it? So that wasn't good enough, so we came back and put it on paper. That's why we're sitting here today with this in front of you. So it's basically just codifying what I'm already doing, or what we're already doing.
So it's more, you say about 6 eyes is upon it then?
Yeah, already. This is not outside of that.
So we just put it on paper so that we will have something to go with?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not a circumvent. It's to satisfy a complaint that there's nothing been put down on.
Right. I just don't want to hear no more complaints, is what I'm saying.
Amen. Amen. Any other questions? Ms. Dunbar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. While I certainly want our employees to get paid in a timely fashion and make sure that our vendors are being paid, I still feel like this is an attempt to codify a poor practice and rather than fixing the process.
All righty, any other comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Featherling, hold on, let me get this right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I don't see how you could possibly operate without having to be able to, somebody has to be able to pay bills before they're due. We can't wait till the first Tuesday of the month to decide who's paying what, or a finance committee to decide which bills get paid. If we have a chairman and we have executives in the office, we have to trust their eyes to be professional enough to question anything that comes up that needs to be questioned. That's my feeling on this. You know, we have to do this. There's no way around it.
Thank you, and know that there's more sets of eyes on it than just ours.
Yes.
And then you get to see it again. So if there is a question, nothing is being circumvented.
Yes, the process is there.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, any other comments? I'll ask that a roll call be taken on this one.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. LaJess.
Aye.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Tholen.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Nay.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Zenz.
Aye.
Ms. Haas.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Swanson.
Aye.
Ms. Zakulo.
Aye.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Moving on to number 15, if you could read that into the title, please, or the title into the record.
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois, authorizing the county board chairman and the vice chairman to continue participation in the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund, IMRF.
All right, a motion to approve this. This is something we have to do every couple of years. The state requires us to recertify this, so is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Mr. Featherling, second. Mr. Eckhoff. As I just said, every 2 years it has to be reauthorized. Whether the vice chairman participates in IMRF is based on their choice and their accounting of their hours. And so the state laws have changed and it requires us to just, as I said, do it every 2 years. So is there any other questions about this? Mr. Snipes?
I have no problem with this. What I do have a problem with is that we suspended all of the county board members, those individuals that have participated in it before, wherever we suspended it. And so as a result, we don't revisit it every 2 years, we just cut it. I'm wondering if you were already in an IRF program, I just know from my job, do we have the constitutional authority to basically suspend it for those that's in it versus those that's new and upcoming? That's just the question I have.
Sure, and that was state law that changed. There's no way that a county board member that could be working enough 1,000 hours to be able to be eligible for IMRF. So board members were limited by state law. And I'm paraphrasing, Steve, you go to UCCI, nobody else could possibly be eligible for IMRF. And it is documented and we are audited on the time that we work. So it's not discriminatory because the state laws are such.
No, what I'm looking at is those individuals that are already in the IMRF, even if the county, if they've already 1,000 hours or whatever the county would have added to it, or is it each individual? Is it collectively up on the IMF, or is it each?
No, it's each person has to work 1,000.
That's what I'm saying. Is each person in the respective category, or if those individuals that are in IMRF,
Can it be accumulative?
is it accumulative? Yeah.
No.
No, it's for that year. It's per year.
No, what we're saying is
Job description.
if you are already in IMRF, like say the city of Kankakee.
I have to be honest, that's a Joanne question. I can't answer that, and it's not really germane.
Because some
to this
people are already in
conversation.
IMRF, and what I'm saying is,
Yeah.
can we by statute go ahead and eliminate if they already have over 1,000 hours in another, like the city of Kankakee, and they were in the county, and all of a sudden that RMF, you canceled it here, but they still got it there.
I don't think so, but again, that's really not germane to this conversation. I don't know. You'd have to talk to Joanne about that. This doesn't relate to what we're talking about here.
Well, the thing is that we're looking to revisit it. So our question is, if we do it in this category, is it just unique or is it across the board?
Mr. Legess?
Let me understand this. He's saying if you work for the Village of Bradley, and you work 1,500 hours, and you're on the county board, you can't apply any of those hours to the county board. You still got to work 1,000 hours.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. If that's what you're saying, yeah. I apologize. I wasn't following that.
Each one is separate. That's why I said
it's separate. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Then that's.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't use the hours here.
You just said I work 1,000 hours. That's why we're trying. That's what.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions, Ms. Dunbar?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is there a county contribution with this?
Yeah. Yeah, always, and an employee. Alrighty, any other questions? It's a roll call, please.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Legess.
Aye.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Tholen.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Zenz.
Aye.
Ms. Haas. Mr. Carrico. Mr. Eckhoff. Mr. Smith. Mr. Swanson. Ms. Zakulo. Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye, motion carries. Moving on to 17. 16?
16.
Agreed upon procedures, AUP of the 2017-2018 credit card payments. That's under our finance area. First, a motion to approve, and then I apologize, Mr. Lear, second. Mr. Kinzinger. Now, for explanation's sake, we are going back and we have to audit why the credit cards were so far off on our payments, and we accrued all those fines and fees, some of which we're able to wipe away, some of them that we couldn't wipe away, that we had to stick with. So we have to, because this is something that's involved in our clearing account and our audit, it will come up, so we have to be able to answer the question. It really is a transparency thing. We can't just say that it's the bank's fault. As the board, we have to know about the finances and where the mistakes were made, if it's something we need to change, if it's somewhere else. So we have that accountability to come to the bottom of that situation. And I don't, Anita, the county administrator, had spent some time looking at this and had some thoughts on the language because she was in accounting for what, 25, 30 years. So the language changed. It's not technically an audit.
Started when I was a 10.
So if you could comment on how this works and what this procedure is, could you let the board know how this goes? I'm glad I didn't tell you I was going to do that, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. The language that I was concerned about is the fact that it's agreed upon procedures and it's not an audit. And in my explanation to our chairman, an audit is a statistical sampling of data to determine the materiality, accuracy of a number. In the case of our audit, it would be our trial balance, right? We're asking this auditing firm to do other specific activities. They're not going to take a statistical sampling of transactions that went through. We ask them to specifically go through each ending balance, make sure they trace all the payments, make sure that they were applied correctly to the proper account. I know it sounds dicey or foolish. That's not an audit. Those are agreed upon procedures in accounting language, and that's the part that we worked on to change.
Right. So that would identify what happened. Did we do something wrong? Where did things go sideways? Unfortunately, we'll be spending more than the actual fines were. But that's what we're tasked with, is to find out where things go sideways. In a lot of different cases, for better or worse. Ms. Peters?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you know how much the cost is on this?
The estimate was $3,500 on the front end. They can only go in and give us a better number once they take a look at all of the activity on the statements and all of the billing and everything like that. So that was their initial estimate, knowing that they have a better knowledge of what our activity is because they audit this clearing account every year anyway, so they kind of have an idea. It's a pretty good estimate, I would say. So that when we come back and we get a report, we'll know more how many hours. It's basically a T&M if you were in construction. It's time and materials is what we're going to get billed, however long it takes. So, Mr. Snipes.
There's a couple questions. How is this audit different than an audit? Than our auditors' responsibilities as far as kind of oversighting that, and then if it's up under the auditors, it's charging the $3,500. Does it prohibit us from adding an individual? Well, I guess the $3,500 it would be better deal because if you add a person, you might add more things. Are they following the governmental accounting standards or the GAAP?
Well, those are two separate things, and our auditors follow both. GAAP is generally accepted accounting principles in total, regardless of what field that you're in. And they will also follow GASB, so government.
Right.
Well, they'll follow governmental auditing standards. So they'll follow both of those. But I want to be clear that it's different than an audit. And it's different because in an audit, what they're doing at the end of the year in the audit is coming in and looking at our trial balance and the numbers that are in the accounts and determining that they are materially correct. An audit will never go through every transaction in your trial balance and ensure that every transaction is correct, right? They're going to take a statistical sampling and they're going to determine that it's materially correct. What we're asking them to do is do a deep dive into transactions that occur in a certain account, this clearing account, and go through all the payments out of there and ensure that they were properly recorded to an outside vendor, the bank, credit card, and posted correctly. Determine maybe why that occurred, determine if there are shortfalls in our procedures that allowed the misstatements to occur, and then make sure that it doesn't, help us work to make sure it doesn't happen again. Those are different activities than an audit.
What I was looking at is if we do use the $3,500 to do this, are we going to look at it and then internally set it up so we can have that watchdog approach, or is it something we want to do year after year after year?
No, I would suspect, we don't know for sure what they're going to find, but in all likelihood, the finance committee will end up with perhaps a change in the finance policy and procedure manual that would maybe add activities or change activities or change responsibility to ensure that this doesn't recur. That's what you're trying to get to with this.
Thanks.
It's clear because just so we're clear, the reason we have to do this is because we don't know where the problem happened. To say that it's the bank's fault without having that documentation to say here is where the problem is, doesn't allow that for us to be able to clearly tell the board this is why we had to pay these fines and fees. So we need to find that in order to say, yeah, it was the bank's fault. Then we go get our money back from them, and then maybe I approach them about paying me back the $3,500 for this thing as well. So it's not just a way to throw whatever against the wall. We want to get better, and we have to get better because the public demands. If we're being fined for not doing things correctly on credit card payments, we're going to make sure that we know why.
Right.
I hope that makes sense. So, any other questions? All right, that would be a roll call vote then.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. LaJess.
Aye.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Excuse me. Mr. Tholen.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk. Ms. Polk?
Aye.
Okay, sorry. Mr. Snipes?
Aye.
Mr. Seroy?
Aye.
Mr. Lear?
Aye.
Mrs. Weber?
Aye.
Mrs. Peters?
Aye.
Mr. Payton?
Aye.
Mrs. Parker?
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar?
Aye.
Mr. Ritter? Mr. Kinzinger? Mr. Fairfield? Mr. Zenz? Ms. Haas? Mr. Carrico? Mr. Eckhoff? Mr. Smith? Mr. Swanson? Ms. Zakulo? Mr. Featherling? Mr. Wheeler?
Aye. Motion carries. Should I order in lunch? Sorry. Try getting that expense approved. Yeah. Jeez. Okay, moving on. The fiscal year 2018 budget amendments, as discussed in finance. Do I have a motion to approve those amendments? Mr. Hess, a second. Mr. Swanson, you have the numbers there in front of you. Are there any questions about those changes regarding those different funds? We have to make sure those funds are appropriated. That's a big part of this, and then also the other amendments that are associated with the bonus or the bonus payout in the elected office. That was the title that I think it was the only. Was that the exact title? Yeah, that was the title. I apologize. I keep taking his job. I'm sorry.
I'm not splitting my fees with you.
So any questions about that on the amendments? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Washington?
Aye.
Mr. Lejas? Mr. Hess?
Aye.
Mr. Tholen?
Aye.
Mrs. Polk?
Aye.
Mr. Snipes?
Aye.
Mr. Seroy? Mr. Lear?
Aye.
Mrs. Weber?
Aye.
Mrs. Peters?
Aye.
Mr. Payton?
Aye.
Mrs. Parker? Ms. Dunbar?
Aye.
Mr. Ritter?
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger? Mr. Fairfield?
Aye.
Mr. Zenz?
Aye.
Ms. Haas? Mr. Carrico?
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff? Mr. Smith? Mr. Swanson? Ms. Zakulo? Mr. Featherling?
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler?
Aye. Mr. Kinzinger.
Mr. Kinzinger?
Vote on budget amendments.
Aye.
Motion carries. I want you to miss the fun. Alrighty, moving on. Number 18. If you could please read the title into the record, sir.
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois, authorizing the County Board Chairman to sign an agreement with Alfred G. Ronan Limited.
Is there a motion to approve? Mr. Payton, a second on that one. Mr. Featherling? Is there any discussion? We kind of went through this at length in Finance and Executive Committee. Ms. Peters?
Could you summarize some of the things that were said? And seems to me about 4 years ago, we did have a lobbyist, and there was a lot of discussion then, and we got into some trouble at having a lobbyist. So just some discussion on that, since I feel like we're kind of redoing something that we undid.
Remind you that we do videotape all meetings. Mr. Lear, you have any comment on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that there are several things that we should call attention to. One, I'm sorry, the credentials of Mr. Ronan and his firm were well laid out in the Finance Committee meeting. He is a former member of the General Assembly who's now worked in this current field for a period of years. He has a firm that has people who are bipartisan in the sense that some of the people in his firm have served on the Democratic side, some have served on the Republican side, and so it's a firm that has good connections. One of the things that's most obvious about the General Assembly is you have to be able to have access to the decision makers, and this firm has that ability. There is a lot of activity that goes on in Springfield, and unless you are, to use a phrase that was presented to us, at the table, sometimes you can not get something decided that it has great value. Another thing that is clearly important for us is a recognition that we have some major infrastructure needs around the county, the largest one dealing with CLS bearing, and the chances of a capital bill seem strong at this time. What's in that capital bill, however, is going to depend on who's at the table. And this is where we get at the table.
Could not have said it better. Is there any other questions, comments? Mr. Snipes?
One, if or when we approve this, I am a tickler when we deal with these lobbyists on what I consider to be a cost-benefit analysis. That means if we put up the money, then we need to have checkpoints to see if this is working, or that we're getting some benefits for the overall residents in this county, or at least for the county. So the safeguards or checkpoints in this, I guess, will be up at the discretion of our chairman and whatever other eyes that we have upon this. I don't want it to come back and we spend money and there is no benefit. So we kind of want to watch this to make sure that we're getting, as we term it, the best bang for our buck. So that's just my comment. I'm not going to be in opposition of it, but I do want to see at some point some reports basically saying what has been done and basically how is this going to benefit us.
Sure. And I will say that's why it's a one-year agreement. Before we had open-ended things that may or may not have been with the right people that didn't have access. Mr. Lear, do you have a follow-up on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In regard to the presentation and finance, Mr. Ronan called attention to the fact that he has clients that are local, including Kankakee Community College, Olivet, and one other, and I guess I'm pulling a Rick Perry.
It's 111. Yeah.
District 111.
Yeah.
And there are indeed a number of benefits that all of those institutions receive that he could point to. So I think Mr. Snipes is right. We need to be able to see what he'll be able to show us, but he has demonstrated on a local basis success in achieving funding that has helped locally.
Substantial success, so, and again, you're right, the proof is in the pudding. If a capital bill comes out and we're not in it at all, or some of the other things we're asking for the river and other projects around the county, we'll know. Absolutely. But I hope you understand why I researched this gentleman and brought him here before us, because I needed success to be able to tell the board we've got the right guy. The second thing is that expansion at CSL and Nucor that depend on transportation infrastructure, the only way to get that kind of money is through a capital bill. And I don't want our kids to say, boy, if they would adjust, that's what this investment is. It's not throwing money at a political payoff. So, hope you understand. Any other questions? Alrighty, we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. LaJess.
Aye.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Tholen.
Aye.
Ms. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Zenz.
Aye.
Ms. Haas.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Swanson.
Aye.
Ms. Zakulo.
Aye.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Moving on to highways and buildings. I wonder if it'd be appropriate to combine and approve these. I think we should read them into the record, combine and approve.
Both 19 and 20? Or,
Yeah, 19 and 20.
okay, you need a motion to combine them first.
Yeah, let me get a motion to combine and approve 19 and 20. Mr. Tholen, second, Mr. Zenz. If we could read both of those titles into the record, please.
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois, appropriating county bridge funds to match Bourbonnais Township Road District local funds to construct a bridge in Bourbonnais Township. and authorizing the county board chairman to sign an engineering agreement and appropriate county bridge funds to match Engineer Township Road District local funds to construct a bridge in Engineer Township.
Is there any questions on that, Mr. Snipes?
Did we get a motion?
Yeah, we got a motion in
Okay.
a second. Yeah. If it's roll call for both, yeah. And I guess if anybody wants to split their roll call vote, yes on one and no on the other, let me know now so we do two separate roll calls. Okay, because we had a motion to combine and approve. That should settle that, but. Okay, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Lajas.
Yes, no. Yes.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Tholen. Mrs. Polk. Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Zenz.
Aye.
Ms. Haas.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Swanson. Ms. Zakulo.
Aye.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Moving on, number 21. Could you please read that title into the record, please?
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois. Authority for the County Board Chairman to sign a service agreement between Kankakee County and Gary Phillips to perform electrical inspections.
Motion to approve that one, please, if we could, to get it into discussion. Mr. Snipes, second. Mr. Kinzinger. Is there any questions about that agreement? It's in your packet. Okay, then that'll be a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Lajas.
Aye.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Tholen. Mrs. Polk. Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber. Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker. Ms. Dunbar. Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Zenz.
Aye.
Ms. Haas. Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff. Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Swanson.
Aye.
Ms. Zakulo.
Aye.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Moving on to number 22, if we could get that title read into the record, please.
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois regarding ZBA case 18-50, special use permit section 121-99.c.34, solar farm in the A1 Agriculture District, sections 12, Pilot Township, USS Lehigh Solar LLC.
All right, to get to discussion, motion to approve that one. Mr. Featherling, a second on that. Mr. Kinzinger. Dell, did you want to run through the basics of this one for the board? No. Yes.
Hey, Kelly, can you switch it over? All right. This is a request by USS Lehigh Solar LLC to establish two 2-megawatt solar facilities on a 39-acre parcel located on 9000 West Road, just north of 2000 South Road in Limestone Town, or excuse me, I think it's Pilot Township. Excuse me.
Pilot. It's Pilot.
Is it Pilot?
Yeah.
Pilot Township, owned by the O'Connor Family Farms Incorporated. There's a site plan for the proposed facility. You can see there's two separate 2-megawatt facilities located on the property. The Mitzdorfer property is the dark green square in the lower left corner. Okay. Skip those. ZBA recommended the denial of the special use permit at their December 17th meeting with a vote of 6-0 with one abstaining. Apparently Ms. Scanlon is related to property owners across the street. On December 19th, the Planning and Zoning Committee recommended the approval of the special use permit, stating that the committee did not agree with ZBA's finding number 2. The findings are on the screen there. If you look at finding number 2, zoning board found that given the unique characteristics of the proposal coupled with the proximity of residents, that the proposal would be injurious to the enjoyment of other properties. Further, the board found that property has a LISA score that is in the moderate category for protection, but it is very close to being in the high category. PZA felt otherwise. They found that there was no unique characteristics to the proposal that would be injurious to the property or the surrounding property owners. I think we can open for questions if you'd like.
Yeah, and just so I make sure that the board is clear, because we heard something different earlier, we did actually establish a finding of fact in the PZA committee of why there was
Yes.
a disagreement.
And that was the finding that the characteristics were not unique, that the county has approved many similar solar farms.
Okay. So that was a point of conflict between what actually happened and maybe some comments earlier.
Correct.
Mr. Kinzinger, to start off with.
In deference to the comments that were made earlier by some of the public. In deference to some of the comments that were made earlier by public comment, and I see that part of that's covered, I think that we should add a statement that there will be only a maximum of 2 sides on the one residence. That's shown that they only have 2 sides of solar panels anyway. And that because we're not certain of the property line and knowing how many roads are to the center line of the road, I would like to see a 50-foot setback from the right-of-way for that road to handle the other individual who thought he was going to be, it looks like they have that, but.
There's already a 100-foot setback.
Oh, yeah, but I'm giving a beginning point, which is the right-of-way.
It is the right-of-way line.
Okay, very good. Then the only one I would add is that the maximum, they could only have that property surrounded on 2 sides with solar panels. They've got it drawn that way, just make certain it's done that way. The little, the right of way.
Any more comments before I go? Okay, I'll go to Mr. Featherling
Mr.
first.
Chairman, it's not possible to surround that property due to the setbacks, the 50 foot from the side property and 100 feet from the setback on the street.
So you're saying that's dead space anyway, nothing can go there.
Obviously, it'll probably continue to be row crops, we're assuming, okay? I heard 40 of these cases, I chaired 40 of these cases. They're all similar. There is a few where there's considerable more of these than we've approved in the past, and I really feel as though we need to stay consistent in what we do in our planning and zoning, and we really need to stick to the facts and not to opinions. The facts are stated, and that's how we make our decisions based upon that at the PZA and also at the ZBA. There's going to be considerable, we have some stipulations on the approval. Is the mic on? I can't hear it. Okay.
Yeah, you're on.
We have some stipulations on the approval as far as, I can't find it here, but we have it needs to be landscaped. There needs to be permeable grass planted in the areas around the solar panels. That needs to be maintained according to the county's regulations. We asked that it be a game type fence instead of a chain link fence with barbed wire on the top. That it's made out of wood with a wire mesh type fence rather than a prison fence, and it's to be surrounded by evergreens and blockages on just 2 sides of the property. They're not required to do it on the 3rd side, I don't believe, Delbert. The spacing, I can't find our.
It'd be along the road and on the side where the house is,
Yeah.
where the home is.
We had a drawing that was shown to us, and it was shown to the ZBA also, that was way off scale. It was way off sale, because if you figure he's set back 100 feet from his house to the setback, and it's another 100 feet setback from the road across the street, these are actually a little bit over 200 feet plus the width of the road away from his residence there. The picture that he shows there shows the panels, I believe they're facing the other way anyway. Is that correct, Delbert?
No, they should be facing east-west.
So that'd be this direction.
It would be that direction.
Okay.
This photograph was submitted to the zoning board by Mr. Scanlon as part of their evidence.
Yeah. They only, when they rotate, believe me, we heard plenty of information on solar farms. When they rotate directions, they usually don't exceed more than 9 feet in height. with the evergreens that are to be planted and the setbacks and the fences and all the other things, I really don't see how that this will be in that drastic of a view there. With the setbacks, and then there was let's see, another question by Mr. Altoff. He's not able to be here now.
He was on PCA.
I was hoping that Mr. Altoff could be here to state what he had to say, but his property rights, that when you buy a property, you're not guaranteed. When you buy a 5-acre parcel in an agricultural committee or community, you're not guaranteed a view from your property. Because according to our zoning ordinance, there are several different things that could be there without any kind of public hearing, without any kind of legal action taking place besides a building permit, would be grain elevators, silos for storage, farm equipment sales and service, welding on equipment and things like so and so. They could also build buildings of pole building type nature. They could be 20 feet tall, 30 feet tall, whatever they wanted them to be. So that's why we felt that this one didn't really vary from the other ones that had been approved in the past. So I really think that's being stipulant and diligent on continuation of procedure to compare to other cases. I really think that this needed to be approved.
Okay. Well, if we could get around first time, there may be other comments. I do want to clarify something as it relates to Mr. Kinzinger's comment. I want to verify that our zoning ordinances say that area in the slice in the front is a setback and it cannot be used for part of the solar panels. Because
I don't know the exact width of that little strip there, but by the time you have the 100 feet from the road and 100-foot setback from the property with the home in it, I do not see how any solar panels could exist in that area.
Correct. That's where I'm at too. So we could, and if we wanted to make a note that if we do approve it, it would be that cannot be solar panels on that side to satisfy the comments there. I just want to make sure.
And I don't know if I mentioned it, but the applicant did agree to the woven fence and landscaping.
Sure. Mr. Legess, first time.
I mean, I want to clarify something. The zoning board, because we have to base our decision on finding the facts. The zoning board disapproved it with findings of fact.
Correct.
And the PZA committee found it or approved it also with findings of fact.
Disagreeing with the single point of.
So our job is to either side with one or the other.
Correct.
Because there already are finding of facts on both sides.
Correct. Yep.
The board needs to look at the evidence and decide which way it feels it should go.
Right.
Mr. Weber?
Well, I'd like to give a voice to, I'm in Pilot Township, so I'd like to give a voice to the people that would not like it to be there. So let me give you some ideas. First part is about the general welfare. It wasn't even mentioned in this case, but on number 2 about the immediate vicinity be the enjoyment for the people around, and they seemed to speak that they didn't think they would enjoy the vicinity with the new solar farm. So during the Zoning Board of Appeals I've attended, the committee members were knowledgeable, they were willing to listen, and they were advocates of the democratic system of government by the people. So therefore, I think when the committee voted 6-0, and with one abstention, that the proposal shouldn't be approved, it recognized it would be detrimental to the enjoyment of the property by the others. Secondly, when PZA met on the 19th, I was interested in all the various things that could be placed on the property by an application and a fee, but I wasn't convinced that this 1850 still seemed to be detrimental to their general enjoyment of their property and the general welfare. And the definition of general welfare is the concern of government for the health and the peace, the morality and the safety of the citizens. And thirdly, and last of my points, is that our Herscher Police Chief Chad Scanlon knows quite a bit about the public's general welfare and his work. So he, as a property owner nearby, testified that his general welfare wasn't positive by having this 1850. So I concur with his testimony, and we heard some, which we can't take into content, but there was other testimony at the 19th meeting too. So based on these remarks, I'm going to vote no on this project because I think the local persons testifying and the zoning board, who I trust with their opinion, voted that it shouldn't be there. So I would say the tenets of general welfare are the people being at peace, and they're not going to be at peace with this project. So thank you for your time.
Yes, Mr. Kulo, first time.
What would be the safety issues? What would be the safety issues?
There are, as far as testimony and evidence,
None?
there are no safety issues. With these types of panels, I think it was all injurious because of the view. It was just the view. That's my understanding from the testimony, Mr. Skimmerhorn.
Same here. I mean, it was mentioned that there was hazardous chemicals inside of these, but no evidence to that fact was presented.
Ms. Dunbar?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate Ms. Weber's comments. I think I agree with her in her entirety. We trust the ZBA to do their job, and as far as I know, we don't very often go against them, so I would stick with their findings. The second thing I just want to mention is that in the resolution, the second paragraph from the bottom, it says, "Now therefore be it resolved." Number 1 says the findings of the Zoning Board of Appeals are hereby approved, confirmed, and ratified and adopted, and that's not what we're doing today, so the resolution is incorrect.
Looks like they just copy and pasted everything that's come before. Any initial thoughts on that, Mr. Rowe?
It'll have to be amended.
It'll have to be amended if in fact the people that the folks that made the motion originally, Mr. Featherling and Mr. Kinzinger, if you would entertain amending that to say that the findings of the Zoning Board of Appeals are hereby rejected, and conclusions of the PZA committee based on those findings are rational and in the public interest. That would be the amendment, basically saying that we don't agree with what we've already cited as the PZA committee number 2, the enjoyment, welfare clause. That would be the amendment that we specifically called that out. So I know that's verbose, but we'll get it down the way that it should be. Is there anybody? Are you acceptable with that amendment? Are you acceptable with that amendment?
That's what I'm looking at is, before, I was going to some of the points.
But I'm not, the reason
Mr.
Fairfield, did you make the motion? It was Featherling, I apologize. Are you acceptable with the motion? Okay, all right, so now, we can, that is you made a motion to amend your original motion.
They've amended their original.
They've amended their original motion, so that's not a vote. That's their amendment to their original motion, okay? That's what we'll be voting on at some point, that we're fixing this document. Mr. Snipes.
Yeah. When they amended that, I was wondering, can we amend the language that they sent, or would it be more conducive to send it back to them or whatever and let them correct it since they voted upon it? I don't know. They voted.
My own personal opinion, they voted on and set the language that was incorrectly put in the paper here.
Right.
They made a decision saying that we disagree with ZBA because of number 2 on this list. And then unfortunately, it was copied and pasted for previous resolutions without noting that change.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So the amendment, can it go back to them, or are we just gonna override it and just deal with the amendment here?
They've already amended it. They've already amended their motion. Okay, now we can get back to any questions, thoughts on this particular issue at hand, Mr. Smith.
Being new to this process on the PZA the other day, I did vote to approve this. Since that time, I've actually read the county ordinances and have tried to find definitions. All right, since having voted with the PZA to do this, I've actually read the county ordinances. I've went through and tried to find definitions between standard 1 and standard 2, and I can't find anything that would detract from the opponent's arguments in this case. I'm a strong advocate of property owner rights, but I'm gonna have to side with Ms. Weber on this one.
Okay. Anybody else first time?
I haven't had a first time.
Really?
No.
It always seems like.
No, it does.
Please, I just leave your mic on, just so you know.
Oh, no. Yeah. The reason I a lot of times when we get these cases up, and if I don't hear any objections, I have no problem with approving. But after hearing Carol, I do agree. I'm a proponent of not taking farmland out of production. That's my thing, because one is I come from as a farmer. I'm a farmer, so land to me is very important. Then the other thing is number 2 is a variable and it's subjective. So as a result, I mean, they can read it, but then we can read it. That's kind of like open, gives all type of credence to kind of go one or the other way. I'm going to support, again, a county board member that's out in that particular area who kind of spoke with her constituents and got that particular guidance. I'm going to go with her as far as voting no, as far as the PZA is concerned, and to uphold the ZBA decision.
All right, any other comments?
And clarify the motion so we'll know if you're voting yes or no.
If you vote yes, it's to approve this as a location for a potential solar farm. Correct? And if you vote no, because it's coming from the PZA with the recommendation to approve this site. Okay?
So if you're voting aye,
you approve of that this is a location that has met the evidentiary, the evidence has said that this is a proper location.
And if you vote nay?
If you vote nay, then you disagree with that. So is there any other comments?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Featherling, last comment if I could, please.
One question for discussion amongst the board is what classifies this property as any different than any of the other 40-some cases that we've already approved?
In my opinion, nothing. Absolutely nothing. But it's each individual person here can vote the way that they will. I'd rather be consistent. I usually and almost always vote with the property owner's rights on these situations. If you want to know, that's why I'm voting for it. But that everybody here can make their own judgment. But I hope that judgment is based on the facts and not what somebody feels. Okay, and please, I have to. That was the last one. We've got to get the vote here.
Okay, but
Okay, last time, please.
One more statement. I'd like you to clarify property owner's rights, because the guy who owns the balance of the property, who owns the solar farm, has the right to do with what his property, which he chooses.
That's what I'm saying. He can
I just want to make
can-
sure you weren't saying with
No,
the property owner
no.
who brought
Property
up the
owner
question.
rights means that someone can grow corn, beans, or energy.
Okay. Thank
And
you.
it's not up to anybody else to tell them what to do unless there is a documented injury to those folks.
Thank you.
So that's why I vote the way that I do. You guys draw your own conclusions. So we have a motion, an amended motion, and a second on the floor. Can we get a roll call vote on this one, please?
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Lajas.
Nay.
Mr. Hess.
I'm gonna vote nay in agreement with the ZBA.
Mr. Tholen.
Nay.
Mrs. Polk.
Nay.
Mr. Snipes.
Nay, and again, I'm dealing with the facts of the ZBA, the interest to enjoyment of other properties, so I want to make sure it's clarified.
Mr. Seroy.
Nay.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Nay.
Mrs. Peters.
Nay.
Mr. Payton.
Nay.
Mrs. Parker.
Nay.
Ms. Dunbar.
Nay.
Mr. Ritter.
Nay.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Zenz.
Nay.
Ms. Haas.
Nay.
Mr. Carrico.
Nay.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Nay.
Mr. Smith.
Nay.
Mr. Swanson.
Nay.
Ms. Zakulo.
Aye.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion fails. What's the count?
7 to 18.
7 to 18. All right, we got a. All right. Just some opening announcements, one opening on the Gar Creek drainage. Yes.
Could I just remind the board that a decision to deny a special use has to be based on the findings of fact? I'd like it clarified in the record which finding of fact you are not agreeing with. You had a discussion about it. I just want to make sure each person who voted no makes that documented either in the record or in writing, please.
Agreeing with the findings of fact of the ZBA.
So this is a general question for everybody who voted nay. Are you agreeing with the ZBA's findings of facts?
Aye.
Is there anybody who disagrees with that assumption in this process? Yeah, was there a different finding of fact that you based that on? Okay, sounds like that's what we have for on the record. Thank you, Mr. Quinn. All right, other business openings. One opening on Gar Creek Drainage District, 2 openings Mantino number 3 drainage, 1 opening Mantino number 9 drainage, 1 opening on Minnie Creek drainage, 1 opening on Momenton Yellowhead drainage, 1 opening on Essex Township Fire Production District. Seems like forever. Old business. Any old business? Any new business? Mr. Eckhoff, did you have something?
Yeah, I'd like to go ahead and make a, thank you, Mr. Chairman, make a recommendation that the executive committee looks over the gun sanctuary with the state's attorney's office and the sheriff to make sure that it's not going to go ahead and stop them from prosecuting the courthouse or stopping anybody from arrest with the sheriff's office.
Okay, so the request is to get it on the executive committee agenda for discussion. So we can't, obviously, I'm sorry?
I thought that was done last meeting.
No, we have not talked about it at executive.
Right over there, the last meeting.
It was a recommendation. Right, yeah, but that's what Mr. Echo was saying, put it on the executive committee. So there was a miscommunication somehow with all the folks that came in earlier. They thought we were voting on it. Nothing has been proposed. There is no resolution yet. So we have to go through the process of executive committee asking the board to have this and the state's attorney's office to look into this and be prepared considering the special circumstances we have here in Kankakee County as opposed to some of the smaller counties and out there. So with that, I'll make sure it's on the agenda for that committee to discuss and vet and suggestions. And if you're not on it, please show up because as with all committees, you don't have to be on the committee to come have input. So I encourage people to come. It's not always about $70. Any other thoughts, Mr. Snipes? Do you have any other new business?
Yeah, like Elizabeth Taylor, I'll keep this short. Kankakee High School girls basketball team again is undefeated, but they're still playing. I do at some point want a proclamation from our board to Kankakee, given the rise of their fame on Channel 9 and the whole 9 yards. I want people to see there's some positive things that's coming out of our Kankakee High School, and those girls right now are undefeated. They go as a team, and the disaster community service and other things. They are. Yeah, I know they won last night, but and they got about two other games. So I do want that up in there, and then also I want to publicly thank Jim Rowe because he has mentored some of our students. He's a state's attorney that's kind of with a unique type of character. He's in those schools. He's with those guys. The ones that he's mentoring. He's tough. He's hard, but at the same time caring. You don't find that into a person. So I definitely want to send kudos in that arena. He's in our schools. He's there. So I do. When people are doing good, I want to make sure that that is kind of elucidated across the board.
Thank you. We will definitely get to the, if you can give your thoughts on what the language of the Kankakee proclamation language should be, get that to Mr. Rowe's office, maybe to Mr. Quinn. He likes tackling this stuff. And then you could also ask Mr. Rowe to see if he'd do a proclamation honoring himself. That would be also, I'm sure he's already got one in his
I have
desk
one
drawer.
ready to go. A few of them, actually.
Yeah. And with that, I'll beg somebody for a motion to adjourn. Is there something else, Mr. Lear?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would remind board members I believe you've received a communication from UCCI about a training seminar for our new board members or even old board members on Monday, January 28th in Springfield. I would request maybe that Kelly could make paper copies of that invitation and have them inserted in the box. I'm going down and would be glad to have someone go with me. In fact, the chairman's indicated if we had enough people, why we might be able to figure out some way to save on travel costs by renting some larger vehicle, because I think with the number of board members that we have new, many of you might be able to gain a lot of knowledge in terms of the role and responsibility of county board members from this UCCI seminar.
Yeah, the thought was if you're paying mileage all the way down and all the way back, if you get 5, 6, 7 people, then you're gonna save money on renting a car or a van overnight. So, the costs.
In terms of the cost, if we went down on Sunday night and stayed overnight, UCCI would reimburse $75 toward the cost of housing. As is true with any membership meeting, the county gets reimbursed $400 for a member in attendance, a one-time or a one payment, one for a $100 payment. So we're really going to come out ahead, even if we have several people come down and end up having to pay a small part of the housing cost.
Okay.
Or if we're really ambitious, we could leave at 5:30 in the morning because it doesn't start till 8:30.
Got that going for you. Okay, and I also have, we're gonna put the full list of all those meetings for the year up in the board members room up there. So don't forget, we got pictures in a moment. So everybody, you know.
What about NACO? Are we still, we're still members of NACO?
All this whole year, we're members of NACO based on that as well, our affiliation. So motion to adjourn, Mr. Legess, second, Mr. Hess. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Second floor.